So hello, I am Kristina. The introduction was probably made your expectations really high. I hope to offer something. I will talk about slaughterhouses and slaughterhouse workers. So thank you for being here and listening to this really difficult topic. To give a bit of a background about this research project that I study sociology in Tallinn University in my master's studies. And actually this project was a part of a research seminar. And it's definitely a preliminary paper and a case study of Estonia's biggest slaughterhouse. So the applicability of these following results will be so-so, but it will be very interesting, I would presume anyhow. This research project is situated within the critical animal studies or sociological animal studies research perspective. Which, this is a very important ally we have in the academia, because critical animal studies, main stance is that, which you can read here as well, is that the relationship or the relations between humans and nature, and especially non-human animals, are in a very deep crisis in our current society, and that crisis has negative consequences for the whole planet. And as you have probably heard, that in addition to critical animal studies, there is another research perspective, which is human animal studies. But there is a significant difference between them, because when critical animal studies is very explicitly political and aims for social change, then human animal studies, which is also our very important ally and a very important field, is a bit more maybe a modest one. And it explores the spaces that animals occupy in human social and cultural worlds and the interactions humans have with them. So it doesn't necessarily aim to end animal use in our current society, although many scholars personally have expressed their views as such, but human animal studies necessarily doesn't state that. So I will also bring some quotes from this book. Have you read it, anyone? It's Slaughterhouse Pile, Gail Easnich. It's written in the 90s, and it's about slaughterhouses in the United States. Things have changed very, very much since then, but since she conducted interviews with slaughterhouse workers as well, I am just adding some input whenever I see fit. And why slaughterhouse workers? I have actually, my last research project was about fur farmers and furriers, and I have also done research about animal rights activists. But slaughterhouse workers, because they have a very, very direct contact with animals as a part of their everyday work, and it's definitely an extreme example of work. And these attitudes seemed probably a very appealing material for analyze before I started conducting the interviews. And it's a way to understand the human-animal relationship better on a universal level. So the question is that how do beings like this end up like this, and who does it, and how does it affect these people who have to be the missing link between these two pictures, which I just showed. So my analyzed topics were attitudes towards their pay, their working conditions, towards killing and the violent nature of their work, towards the stereotype of a butcher, and the main one was their attitudes towards animals. And this is their everyday reality. It's not the slaughterhouse where I conducted my interviews, but it's pretty similar. So I did interviews with slaughterhouse workers and butchers, And I also did an observation of the killing line, which was like 21 different workers there. I did it together with the director of the slaughterhouse, who gave me insight about what was happening at each position. The opinions of the workers mostly overlapped, with some exceptions. And if I can begin, then like this general attitude which the slaughterhouse workers perceived about them was that they are bullies, criminals, principally evil people. And one interviewee said that when there is a group of people meeting and one of them happens to work at a slaughterhouse and things should get hectic, then most people think that he would momentarily end the conflict with a knife. That's how this butcher thought that people think of him, that the slaughterhouse workers are like prone to violence immediately. But all of them emphasized that they or none of their co-workers are like that, and they like actually really need to deal with this stereotype of them quite a lot. Like we have a stereotype of us as vegans, which we need to confront mostly on a daily basis. They also have one about them being really prone to violence. Also that it is usually perceived as a very dirty job, and that the quote, another quote is that people think that we are standing in feces up to our hips and the rest of our body is covered in blood. But it's probably because people are unaware that most of the Eastern European modern slaughterhouses are rather clean actually, because the reality is very machine-based. For example, in Estonia, half a year when cows are slaughtered, when they put the knife in the center of their throat to slit their throat, then this is like a special knife for it, which has a pipe after it, and it starts to collect the blood, because we have a national dish called like blood sausage. So they collect the blood for it for half a year in advance, because in Christmas then they need a lot of blood for this like specific product. But like, why am I saying this is that for half a year most of the blood goes directly into that pipe. They still get bloody, etc. But some time ago it was done in a completely different manner. So these new machines that they are getting are really sort of helping to improve the working conditions as well. For example, when I did the interviews, it was in 2011, it was 5 years ago, they had recently received this machine which cuts the pigs in half. And they were really proud of it, and I kind of understand them because previously they had done it with a huge saw. And it took a lot more time, strength, and it was a lot more difficult to do it. But with that machine doing it, it helped them ease their pain. And this is a really interesting part as well, that like none of the workers see it as their calling in life, and none of them actually decided or chose it as their path or their career. One thing which is really specific about the sample of the slaughterhouse workers which I interviewed is that since I was like, I had to work together with the director of the slaughterhouse, so he chose the interviewees for me. I couldn't pick whoever I wanted. And all of these workers had been working there for more than 20 years, which is very peculiar, or like it's like a very special sample of these people, because usually people don't last that long. So like take under consideration that the quotes that you are hearing are from people who have worked there for over 20 years. And the stories how they ended there are mostly coincidental. The Soviet Union had collapsed, Estonia was regaining independence, they had to make a choice, and there were some benefits in going to a slaughterhouse which weren't at the other option, which was, for example, a hospital or something. So they chose which was easier at really difficult times. The people who go to work there, actually when I was preparing for this, I had a different block of questions about their previous training. How do you learn this thing? How to learn to kill animals? And during the first interview I understood that, okay, I can completely eliminate this block because you don't go through training to learn, you learn on the spot, you learn while doing the work. So how they hire people is that if someone applies, they watch a video of the killing line, and if the person doesn't start to vomit, then they're hired. No kidding. Because a lot of them do start to vomit, and another thing was that when I was doing the observation of the killing line, together with the director of the slaughterhouse, he was asking me that, wow, you have really strong nerves, and how come it's like that, or how is it so that, do you want to come and work for us? Because it's not all people can handle it, so yeah. So an important thing is also the fact that they learn while they are taken to the killing line, and they need to start doing the work. Someone is with them for a while, and they need to gain independence really fast, and that can produce a lot of quality errors. And worker turnover is very high. I don't have statistics about Estonia, but in the States, in some slaughterhouses, it's even 100% per in a year. It was really interesting that when I spoke with the director of the slaughterhouse, when he was choosing the workers for me, he said that, yeah, I will give you good people to interview, not those who are weird and who are not very reliable, and who are saying weird things. And I was oh, I don't mind them. Yeah, diversity is very good, but he eventually chose good representatives, definitely. But he was implying that there is something going on there as well. And obviously, as everywhere, due to machines, the work rate has increased massively. They are just able to kill more pigs in 1 minute, for example. And the biggest slaughterhouse kills 3 pigs per minute. This book, The Slaughterhouse, which I mentioned, by Gail Ischnitz from the States, this covers the topic of increased killing line speeds a lot. It's a really good and interesting read. And the biggest problems for the slaughterhouse workers is that their shift might be 8 to 10 hours, something like that. They have very repetitive movements. For example, you're the one that cuts off the liver, or that cuts off some specific part of the animal, and you do that movement throughout the day. It's not very human-friendly thing to do. Yep. They get blisters because they keep these knives strongly at their hands all the time. There is the problem of heat and cold, because the main killing line is very, very hot, because the pigs are dipped into boiling water to remove their hair. And this boiling water gives out a lot of steam as well. And also the pigs are burned with flamethrower, is that the word? So also to remove all the hair on their body, to make sure that it's removed. So it's very, very hot there, and they have these very big rubber boots and rubber aprons, and they can't really breathe too much in that outfit. And the sideline is very cold because they are dealing with freshly cut pieces of meat. So the temperature needs to be really low. They have some gloves, but they don't really keep warm. So it's very hot or very warm. Stiffness, obviously, being in the same position, doing the same movement throughout the day. So although this slaughterhouse where I was, it was very modern. It's like a very modern one. The working conditions there are still, they're not good. And it was really interesting that when I was talking about the working conditions, then the interviewees emphasized that the pay is not sufficient for that kind of work. Like they were emphasizing that kind of work. And yeah, but they were actually really proud when I mentioned before that the stereotype is that they are covered in species and species as well. Yeah. Yeah. But actually, they were a bit proud of the fact, this is not the slaughterhouse, but it resembles it, that they could wear like white clothes under their this rubber stuff, that it's clean. I can wear white clothes under this protective gear. Yes, that was, yeah, but these are the aprons that they're wearing, and that's the conditions that they have. And just to bring some diversity in that, like, slaughterhouse workers around the world can have very, very different experiences, very different daily work. Like here, these people have to do everything by hand. They don't have machines, and we can only imagine what this means to them, for example. So, attitudes towards animals. Obviously, all the basic arguments which we are very familiar with, it has always been this way, the way we treat animals. Otherwise, we would have to eat grass and flowers, especially dandelions. Yes. Yeah, like all of that, those were covered. But what is important here is that I asked them that, like, how would they see a world without slaughterhouses? And it was a really difficult question, obviously. It brought them that no, this is like a really necessary position, and it brings benefits to the society where everyone eats meat. Someone needs to do the killing. And like all these arguments that it has always been this way, people eat meat, they need meat, they work as a very, very important arguments to support, to get over the really unpleasant stab. And I think this is one of the most important things that I have to say with this presentation at all, is that this stab is really unpleasant to them as well. But I will continue. A mechanism of thought is required to overcome this uncomfortable feeling. They need to like deal with it to get over this unpleasant stab. And like, why am I addressing this is that very often you hear that slaughterhouse workers, they're really evil people. They enjoy their work or something like that, that they, you must be like a bit twisted to go there or to work there, or you must have some evil gene inside you. I would say that necessarily isn't the case. There obviously might be some people there, but that doesn't seem to be like the prevailing case. And the workers that I interviewed with more than 20 years of experience find the routine more easily bearable, because they need to build up and maintain this very important routine to somehow push this unpleasant part of the work aside, and to remain as a human being, and to be able to look themselves in the mirror by the end of the day. And also this killing animals for food is perceived as something normal and ordinary. They obviously need to emphasize on that, because they understand the violent nature of their work. And it's also like these kind of mechanisms are involved, that if you do written work as a student of sociology, like he was saying that during an interview, then I kill pigs. These are like on the same level. And this is also important, that it's very, very much understood by them that the first worker of the line is the one who takes the life of an animal. But the important part is that that is something they can't think about. It's not that they won't or don't want to, but the point is that they can't. Obviously they won't and they don't want to, but the emphasis is on the can't. And if we would think about it, it means taking the life of an animal, then it would be the wrong place to work. So you have all read Melanie Joy's carnism theory, right? Go read it. Okay. It seems really interesting. Like, I'm just going to talk to the people who have read it. When Melanie talks about people being unaware of their carnism, then it seems like with the slaughterhouse workers, the case is a bit like more maybe complicated or interesting, because they are very, very much aware, but they need to do something in order not to be aware, otherwise their life would collapse. And yeah, this is a quote from the book Slaughterhouse, that you may look a hog in the eye that's walking around in the blood pit with you and think, God, that really isn't a bad-looking animal. You may want to pet it. Pigs down the kill floor have come up and nuzzled me like a puppy. 2 minutes later, I had to kill them. I can't care. And the point is to put yourself in the shoes of that person who has to think that way. Like, can you imagine the schizophrenia happening there? How much time do I have? 18, cool, okay. Yeah, so the key is not like what do they focus on or what do they think, but what do they have to block. And their mechanisms or their routine building to maintain some sort of a normal inside climate within themselves is that, for example, they all have earphones on, they listen to music or radio or something like that, also during the stabbing. And it helps to maintain a better inside climate. So it goes like this: a pig comes, I stab it; another one comes, I stab it, just like to remove all emotion from it, so that it would be completely routine based. And here's another quote from the Slaughterhouse, which is these interviews were done more than, it was 30 years ago, but they're universal in that sense that although the speed of the killing line gets faster, the things that the workers need to go through, they're sort of still, they remain the same. And then it gets to a point when you're at the daydream stage where you can think about everything else and still do your job. You become emotionally dead, and that's the price these people have to pay. And now we come to a very, very big exception, which was a very big surprise to me, because when I started doing the research, I couldn't expect that this might come up. And this is baby calves. The slaughterhouse where I did the interviews kills cows and pigs, but sometimes it might happen that, for example, a barn burns down somewhere, and there are these calves which the farmers have nowhere to put them, so they call the slaughterhouse, can we bring them to you? And these incidents have happened, and the interviewees were telling me they have all worked there for more than 20 years, that they couldn't kill them. So, you're a butcher, what do you mean you can't kill an animal? That didn't make any sense whatsoever, as at least it seemed to me like that. And there had been many of these stabbers or stickers there, and they all went to the animals, no, we can't do it, and the animals were sent back. And this is completely, what are you telling me? I kept asking and asking, and since these baby cows aren't their everyday working material, and since these baby cows have these big, beautiful, innocent eyes and huge tears running from their eyes, then slaughterhouse workers and stickers with more than 20 years of experience are like melting down, and they can't use this blockage mechanism anymore, which they are using on a daily basis otherwise. And the quote is that calves are something different, something special, and I am unable to make my heart cold to them. And I asked, wait, don't like adult cows cry? Oh yeah, but that's different, because like these calves bring something totally different, something totally new into the slaughterhouse, which these workers don't come up, like have interactions on a daily basis. So in order to understand this, I spontaneously constructed a question that, like, okay, the slaughterhouse worker was driving on a bicycle on some village road, and next to the road there is a baby calf who has been hit by a car. Next to the baby calf is a pile of rocks. The calf is in his last dying agony. He's really in pain, but not dying yet. Like, would the butcher be able to end the calf's miseries, like to put it out of its agony? I thought that maybe there would be like yes, no answer. Maybe, okay, it's a difficult question as well. But they were like, there's only a pile of rocks. I have to beat them. Do I have my knife with me? Asking more and more questions, and like eventually it tended to be so that if I would have my knife with me, I might be able to do it. But I'm not going to beat the poor animal to death, obviously. Like who does that? Like these kind of attitudes. So like obviously what we can learn from here is that if even butchers are so much influenced by like baby animals, then obviously we need more of that on our social media. So, yeah. The Slaughterhouse book also covered this sort of attitude about calves. So the situation is that these baby calves are all piled up in the place where there's supposed to be one adult cow, and the person who is supposed to put the bolt there is like unable to do the bolts, and some get it, some don't, etc. And the worker who is supposed to be responsible for the baby calves, to put them out of their like misery, and not to like, if they go to the killing line conscious, they will suffer like huge amounts of pain more. But the baby ones, 2-3 weeks old, I felt bad killing them, so I just let them walk past. It's like, it's completely irrational in that sense that like killing them would help them actually when they are in a slaughterhouse, but I felt bad doing it. So like this is really, really interesting what is going on like psychologically when baby animals are interfered. All of the interviewees agreed that animals have souls, but it's yet another thing which they can't think of to ease the job. And I asked about pets as well, and they say that my cat at home means a lot to me now since I began working as a butcher. I see lifeless bodies of animals all day. My cat is also an animal, at least he lives. And I think I won't like touch the observation of the killing line too much, just like maybe one comment about the book I was referring to. It touches a lot like the topic how pigs used to be killed in slaughterhouses, and they used to do it with electricity, which like during the interviews also came up, which was a really, really bad way of doing that. It didn't work. It made the pigs even like more alive because they got an electric shock, which didn't make them unconscious, but rather just like shocked them. But now pigs are put in gas chambers before they are killed, and like it's like really controversial because the gas they are using is also very torturous to them. It takes it was a bit about a minute, but this time under a minute is complete torture. But luckily it's complete torture, but like the comparison is that otherwise they would come out and their like throats would be slit or their heads would be cut off while they are still alive. So it's complete torture, but it's better than what it used to be. That's all I can say. Okay. Yeah, and here's another picture of their like daily reality. And like not a very good summary, but and the point is that the blocking of thoughts about these animals is what helps them do their job. They are not happy with the conditions nor the salary, but they see the slaughterhouse as an like an important institution in the functioning of the world where everybody eats meat. Yeah, and thank you for bearing with me.